Today, I'm joined by Azi Handley, Vice President of Global Strategic Alliances at Kyndryl, where she leads the company's partnership with Google Cloud to drive innovation in AI, application infrastructure, and mainframe modernization. With more than 27 years of experience across global tech giants like IBM, VMware, AWS, Microsoft, and now Google Cloud, Azi has built a remarkable career at the intersection of technology and business strategy. She's known for forging alliances that create real impact, guiding complex transformations and helping executives gain the buy-in they need to lead change. What makes Azzy stand out isn't just her deep technical expertise, but her ability to connect strategy with people, to turn modernization into meaningful outcomes for organizations worldwide. I'm excited to dive into her journey, her leadership lessons, and her perspective on where AI and cloud are taking us next. You've gone from hands-on cloud architect roles at IBM to VP of Global Alliances at Kyndryl. What has been the biggest turning point in your career journey?
So I started as a technical person. My background is engineering, but my passion is with people. And, very early on in my career, even before IBM, when I first started in technology, I understood and learned that I was not going to be happy just talking to my computer. And the big thing for me was I want to be customer facing. I want to talk to customers. I want to learn. I want to grow. And I want to be able to collaborate with other people. So very early on, maybe 6 months into my start of my career, I started looking for more of pre-sales engineer roles versus post-sales engineer roles or architect roles. And 20 plus years later, here I am, and I love it.
That's terrific. Just briefly, what is the difference for some of our listeners? What's the difference, say, between a pre-sales architect and a post-sales architect?
From pre-sales perspective, I think that's when you're working directly with the customers, but more on the decision-making side, not from delivery, but from decision-making side. And I found that was where we could be more creative, out of the box. I am known to not live inside a box. So for me, my personality, the best thing was having the freedom to, just openly collaborate with our customers to come up with as to what the best solution for them is, versus after the fact when the decision has made, post sales, trying to figure out how to deliver, based on the earlier decision. So I enjoyed being part of the decision making, part of the strategy, more than kind of on the execution side.
Right. And staying within the constraints of what has already been decided upstream.
Exactly.
It's great. As someone who's risen through the technical and business roles, what advice would you give to younger professionals who want to follow a similar type of path?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, and I'm big on mentorship. I would like to think a relatively large group of mentees that I work with. And, throughout my career, the one thing that has helped me has been networking. I've never felt uncomfortable reaching out to anyone, regardless of their role, their, level, how senior they were from career perspective. So I've built a relatively large network of individuals that I can always reach out to for help, for guidance, but also as I was trying to kind of shift my career into different things, ability to go back to someone I know and say, hey, I'm looking to make a change. This is what I'm looking for, and potentially, pursue another career with their support. And, I always say most of my jobs, I actually didn't properly interview for. It was a connection that reached out, and, it just made it easier. The second thing was mentorship. From very early on in my career, I understood having a mentor was critical, because I know what I know inside the box of my experiences and what I've learned. But as soon as you talk to someone else that has had a different experience, different box, you just, open up an opportunity to potentially take a completely different path than what you thought was, possible within your box. So these are the two things that has been critical. It doesn't matter what role you have. It doesn't matter what role you want to have, whether you're in technology or any other business. I think networking and always having a mentor has helped me get to where I am today. And I will continue practicing those as I progress in my journey.
That's terrific, Azzy. That's an amazing answer. I totally agree. It's something I coach my colleagues and mentees on as well, is to continue to network, both for what you can learn from other people, as well as just building people that you can reach out to for assistance in your day-to-day role. So inside a company, just reach out and network to them, build those relationships before you need them. And lo and behold, like, they will have that connection and understand your work and will give you opportunities as well. And don't be afraid to reach out to those people all around you. They're all resources. And most of the senior people I've ever dealt with, they always want to help. They always want to help. And I was very fortunate early in my career. I did the same thing. I reached out to people who were more senior to me, and they were so generous. And I benefited at every stage of my career, and I continue to. And I have tried to return the favor as well. And I enjoy, that's part of what I enjoy doing. So let's move on to, here's one that I think will really, everyone struggles with, but people who are self-aware aren't. And I think you're very self-aware. What's one leadership mistake you made that turned into a valuable lesson?
So many. I think as part of being a leader is acknowledging when you make a mistake. And I think as humans, we make mistakes. I always compare it to being a parent. I think it's assumed parents know best and they know it all and they never make mistakes. And they're just these superheroes that in reality doesn't exist. As a parent, as a human, I make a lot of mistakes. One of the mistakes I made early on that kind of changed the way I operate moving forward was, as a female, slightly older than maybe some of your younger viewers. As a female, it was a very competitive market for me, especially as I moved more into the customer-facing sales side of things. And I think being young and being naive, I assumed as long as I do the right thing, the right things will happen for me. I had led an initiative at a customer. This is a few years back. And it was very successful. We won the deal. It was actually our first deal. We signed with this particular customer. But I failed to include the account team or the leader for the account team. And when she found out that we've been having these conversations, because I was under the impression if we get the deal, she gets paid, she should be happy. Why would she not? And I couldn't get a hold of her. So I decided to just move forward with the rest of the team that was available locally. But she called a meeting. I entered, and I never forget this moment in my career. And actually that was the reason I decided to become a mentor. I decided to join women inclusive networks or women in tech networks, because I thought, okay, if I can have an impact on one younger person that's starting out their career, then it's worth the time and the effort. She invited me to this meeting. It was roughly 20 people at the round table, her team. And I opened the door, not realizing they had started, they had like a pre-meeting before the meeting I was invited to. I knocked on the door. I opened the door. She turned around. She goes, "Who the heck are you?" And someone in her team said, "That's Azzy." She looked me up and down and said, "Now I know why the customer bought from you." I think my entire body went red. She was just reacting. She was way older than me at the time. She was reacting to the fact that I was not inclusive. I did not necessarily wait for her. I just proceeded, even though we won the deal, even though she got paid, she didn't feel like she was part of the team. And her way of, reacting was to put me down.
Right. And it's very public play.
Yes. So I just froze, my face bright red. And one of her leaders just pulled a chair and goes, "Azzy, just come sit Honest to God, to this day, I have no idea what happened for the rest of the meeting because I was just so shocked and embarrassed. I just
Right.
wanted this to end so I can get the heck out.
Right.
But one thing it taught me was regardless of how the other side is, to always make sure that I include everyone, I keep track of how I've tried to include everyone, kind of recording it, making sure the stakeholders are aware. And the final lessons learned was not to ever piss off a very strong, senior female executive, because when they come back, they are not always, they don't always react the way you would have hoped. I would have hoped she would have grabbed me separately and say, hey, listen, like, great, you sold the deal. That's awesome. It's our first deal in this area to this customer, but next time, make sure you go through me. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that would have been more appropriate, but it taught me to be resilient, to be able to respond on my feet and ensure in future I'm more inclusive and never do that to someone else.
Right. Right. So the key takeaways were don't do that as to any mention, but really, I think the other takeaway that you really important one, and I just want to emphasize it for our listeners, is do your stakeholder assessment, like map your stakeholders. They're more important than you think initially, and be careful in making sure you understand what their importance is to you and to the project and to your success, both immediately and long term. And so
Yes,
perhaps be over inclusive to help
correct.
address some of the egos that you might not be aware of. And even senior people make mistakes like this person did.
Mm-hmm.
They have egos, and they're, you got to treat them, I wouldn't say gently, but be aware that they exist. So
Exactly.
thanks for sharing that. That's great. What's one of your favorite client stories?
This is actually a kind of more recent. I had a client, we were at a conference and I was meeting the senior execs of one of our partners. We're in a boardroom, we're having a conversation. The next minute, the door opens and there is a client that walks in, and I didn't know, I didn't know this person. So I assumed it was, part of the partner team. And the next thing, we all turn around to, like, because we were going through intros. And then at that point, I realized, oh, this is an actual customer, which was fine. But I thought, this is kind of strange. I
Right.
thought we're meeting the partner, like there's a customer here. So I kind of went with the flow, only to realize the reason the customer showed up, last minute at this meeting was because the customer was very unhappy with our services. But I didn't know because I'm like I've been in the partnerships for so many years. I don't necessarily get involved on the day-to-day interactions we have with our individual customers. We sell something, then we move on. We don't know what happens after we leave.
That
So
moves on to the client management team.
exactly. It moves on to the delivery team, the client exec team, and they own it, they manage it. So she went on to tell us how bad and poorly we were delivering, which made it super awkward because we were sitting with our partner and this was like internal kind of our dirty laundry. So I actually decided personally to invest to better understand what were the challenges, what was it that we were not doing. The client was a European-based customer. How I invested was I was essentially flying out there almost every month and kind of sitting down, going through, okay, well, what is it we're doing? What is it that we should be doing? And how do we change this? Fast forward about 12 to 18 months later, we did not only recover and became one of their favorite partners, but more importantly, they won an award from delivery perspective for like the fastest, best, most efficient migration, within the region, which was obviously delivered by us. And fast forward to now, they are one of our, public references. We've had several interviews with them on their experience from delivery perspective, some of the consulting engagements we've done for them. So it went from a very, very bad. I remember the first time I met the team, as they were telling us, their frustration, I was typing because I wanted to capture it exactly the way they said it. I don't want
Right.
to then leave and then think, oh, I think she said this versus
Right.
that, or I think he said that. I wanted their words, their story. And I sent all of that to the account team. And they were shocked because they had no idea the
Wow.
client felt that way. So it's one of my favorite stories because we took a very unhappy customer, and by investing time, I always believe, regardless of what you're doing, what your role is, it's all about the human connections. And once you make the connection, you better understand everyone, they have different things that ticks them off or that they look for. They have different targets, different priorities, and understanding those, you may not be able to 100% give them what they need. But even, when you attempt, them understanding, okay, she's trying. Okay, maybe I didn't get everything on my list, but I got most of what I got. Feeling they're heard.
Right.
I think you can turn a very negative situation to a really positive one. This was obviously going from one extreme to the other extreme. Not everything is always, it doesn't always have happy endings, but it's one of my favorite stories, that how by investing time, resources, and really the connection, we were able to turn things around.
So that's an awesome story. So that's establishing a connection, building trust, and welcoming them in and their feedback, and making them feel heard is important in any of these relationships, especially in a challenging one where the customer's already, or the client or stakeholders already pissed off, and just the act of not passing them off to another team or another colleague and just listening and hearing them out, and obviously taking detailed notes and all of those things, and then making sure and following up and managing it through the whole life cycle paid off. And you it sounds like you turned around a key client and turned them into something more important and more valuable as a result of your actions. That's awesome. Great story. What's the biggest mistake that you see project delivery leaders making?
The biggest mistake, and it's a very common mistake, especially if it's something you have done many times in past. Sometimes you think you know better than the customer. The number of times I have been told, hey, have you tried this? This would never work at this customer. Well, why not? We've been managing this customer. We've been working with this customer for 10 years. They will never agree to this, or this will never pass their compliance check, or, just, I think, roadblocks we put based on our experience, our perception. One of the reasons I liked pre-sales and post-sales is because I don't like a box. I think we should provide every opportunity, every different way of doing things. And maybe a regulated industry will not agree to do XYZ, but maybe they will agree to do some other things on our list. So what I see time and time again is when we put customers in a box based on our personal history or experience, and kind of we put an imaginary ceiling that we can only go this high. They will never buy, for example, AI from us because we're not their AI partner. They will never buy this particular software from us because they've always used that other software. And as a result, we limit our ability to succeed at the customer. But I think more importantly, the customer doesn't get the full benefit. They're not the experts. They're trying to run their own business, which is not technology. They are the bank, the insurance company. They are the paper. That's their business. That's their expertise. You're coming in as a technology expert, and I think it's your duty to give them all the options and why this versus that. Make recommendations. Yeah, they have the final say, but if they don't even know what the options are, they're never going to pick it.
Right. That's awesome. So don't go with preconceptions or assumptions about what is available to the customer. Be willing to explore other alternatives, and don't live with that we've always done it this way kind of perspective.
Yeah.
Excellent advice. What do other people misunderstand about delivery?
I think there is the misconception that somehow delivery is perfect. I always go back to delivery is done by people. And I don't care who you are, nobody's perfect. We make mistakes, we put a 1 instead of a 0 by accident, and then all of a sudden it changes everything. There is a lot of, I think, blame that's put on delivery. Sometimes it's not even error. The initial design was incorrect. So now when they're trying to execute, it doesn't execute as, based on what the outcome was supposed to be. So they don't always treat the delivery team like a partnership. It's almost like we have a bat and we're beating them into delivering. And I find delivery teams that are successful are teams that build a close and collaborative partnership with the customer, but also a close and collaborative partnership with the pre-sales team so that the requirements are transitioned, more effectively. But also it opens a line of communication between delivery team and customer to say, hey, I know you said you want to do this, but in reality, if you do that, you're not going to have access to this anymore. Or doing this will limit this other thing for you. Is that really what you want to do? And including them as part of, the proposals, getting their feedback. Hey, listen, this is what we're looking to propose to this customer. Would this actually work?
Right.
It's a simple question that may resolve major future delivery challenges, but I don't think we do it as often as we should.
That's awesome. That's a really good piece of advice. So you're saying involve the delivery folks in some of the upstream design decisions, planning decisions, and so on, because you don't want to hear about them 6 months after they start trying to deliver, or 3 months after, and then you have your irate customer.
Exactly.
That's great. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I've ever received. It's not an advice I like, but in the corporate world, it's the best one I've received, where I used to have this boss. I'm very transparent. I just say the way it is. And that doesn't always work in corporate world. And the best advice I received from one of my mentors was that I have to start acting a little bit more like a politician if I want to get things done. So get separate buy-in from this stakeholder and separate buy-in from this stakeholder. Doesn't matter if they don't like each other. You just, try and figure out how best to work with them, bridge the gap, and be more of a politician to be able to move your agenda forward. It's not my best, that's not how I operate. I like to be very direct and transparent. So it's something that I continue to work on, but it has helped me in some of the more challenging situations. We're dealing with a lot of senior leaders that didn't necessarily like working together. This has helped me to bridge the gap. And actually, as recent as this past Friday, just doing this, I got exactly what I wanted, but I had to play a little bit of a politics with the two senior leaders I needed approval for. So that's the one thing that was different. It was completely against the way I behave and operate, but it's helped me out.
So what I heard is the advice was to help you navigate conflicts and help facilitate better and easier outcomes. Perhaps a nuanced messaging style in some circumstances is warranted as opposed to more direct and confrontational style. Would that be
Yes.
fair? Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
And it served you well. It was good advice for you. And for you, because as you said, you were very direct, you became aware that doesn't necessarily play with all of the types of stakeholders you might encounter.
That's right.
Excellent. Okay. So how do you coach leaders to embrace change when it feels risky or overwhelming?
So it's interesting because I've always had partnerships or roles that have been out of the box and trying to execute a change. people just generally don't do well with change. And, being part of Google, our main focus is AI. AI is change. It scares the heck out of people because they assume with AI, they're going to lose their jobs. Revenue will go down or they'll have smaller signing. So the way I have had success, not 100% success, but some success in this area, acknowledging that change is the hardest part of any organization. Doesn't matter what your business is. Any kind of change is hard. It's hard from a work perspective, but it's also hard from career perspective because sometimes you end up, doing jobs you maybe don't like, or that was not your plan. So I try and work with them in smaller scope. You don't have to just come in and just execute. This is the big picture. This is where you want to go. And you want to go here because of these requirements you have, these obligations you have to your customers, to your board members, to your shareholders. But you can't go from here to there like overnight. It's just impossible. Let's do step by step. What are you comfortable with? Like, these are the steps you need to take. What are you comfortable with? Let's just do that. It could be a very small, minute change, but with big impact. And I typically try and, as the first one, the lowest change or the smallest change with the highest impact. So what are those things so that you can actually see? If it's a small change, very small impact, maybe you're like, hey, rock the boat. It's not enough impact for me to implement here. So baby steps. But then at some point you better run, because if you don't run, you're going to be left behind. And I like to always bring in, like if you go to a bank or if you go to an organization internally and say, hey, listen, this is what we're trying to do. I like to bring in someone else that has actually done it. You tell them how successful you have been. We met a CIO at a very large customer. And he was relatively new in his role. And one of the things he said, we have, we've grown through mergers and acquisitions. And as a result of that, every one of these organizations has their own system, their own way of doing things. Sometimes I can't even email someone because they use a different platform for their email than so I've got to search what is their, email address. Right. So he said, I don't know. I'm new. I don't want to make a huge change. And all of a sudden, essentially I lose my job because it's too much. So you know what? Be at Kyndryl post-spin. We had, I think, 18 months to completely change and transform our environment, our culture, our processes. For 85,000 employees, I said, why don't I connect you with our CIO? He can kind of walk you through lessons learned, what worked, what didn't work. And it was probably one of the best meetings we'd had because it was a heart-to-heart conversation. We weren't trying to sell, he wasn't trying to sell their CIO anything. He was just saying, hey, listen, this is what worked for me. This is what I did. And by the way, I was able to accomplish this in 12 months versus 18. So I think that also has helped resonate with the leaders. When you bring someone who's already done it and they feel, okay, I'm not the first and the only one. There are others that have gone down this path before successfully. So that's one area I think it can help from when you go in and you want to make a big change.
So I would say bang on. So what I heard is, you have this big elephant that you have to swallow. They have to swallow. And whether they know it or not, you're going to tell them they have to swallow to go from here to there. But take a small bite-sized piece first figure out what the small piece that they can consume to feel safe about it. And the second key message that I heard is bring in somebody who's done that before, this big change, and just have a heart-to-heart about the challenges they faced. And specifically, I think what you were referring to was the Kyndryl IBM divestiture and spinoff. And
that's right.
And brought the CIO together to share the pain and challenges that they went through.
Yes.
That's excellent. That's awesome. What skills do you encourage in your mentees to build today that weren't as important when you started your career?
AI, AI, AI. If you don't have some sort of an AI badge, class, course thing you took, I think in the next, year, any job role, doesn't matter what it is, you apply for, you have to show you've done it, you've used it, you know it, you've got some sort of a skill set. All of my mentees, I've encouraged them to get certified, to take a training class, to learn, subscribe to magazines, local organizations that focus on AI, and just use it in your day-to-day life so that you can understand. So that's the one thing I think is very different. Especially for some of the, I think, older generation or very young generation that are coming into the workforce. If you don't have AI, you're not going to get a job. And for
Right.
older generation, if you don't have AI, you're just not going to be able to maintain a role long term.
Absolutely. That's great advice. I'm pushing that narrative as well to my clients, is that they have to embrace AI in everything they do. It reminds me of, way back early in my career, it used to be a thing to put on your resume if you're like junior, knows on Microsoft Office, and at some point it stopped being a thing that you would ever put on your resume. That
You
was a
have to
skill.
know it.
Just everyone assumed you knew how to use a computer, that you knew how to use Office or any of those Office productivity tools, and AI is the same. It's just another big bag of tools that comes
Yeah.
that you have to be able to use and grasp, and people expect that you're using that. It's like a carpenter; they don't expect you to come with hand tools. They expect you to come with power tools. Hand tools come in handy sometimes. The old way was a pen and paper, but everybody that they're hiring now has power tools, and they're 10 times more productive than they were before the power tools.
I agree.
So that's great advice. Many companies still hesitate with digital transformation. They struggle with it. They're at a certain stage in their evolution with technology. What's the most common barrier you see, and how do you help those leaders move past that?
Actually, 100% of barriers, whether it's digital transformation, whether it's introducing agentic capabilities, it's a culture, it's people. People are the biggest barriers. And I think a lot of companies, they try with technology. Let's change the technology, let's force people to use the new technology. I remember when we first got our Copilot licenses and everyone wanted the licenses. And I'm like, yeah, I want one. And I got it. And I'm like, okay, now what? What do I do with it? I don't know how to use it. What's the purpose of this? And I think one thing, we failed, much like any other organization out there, is changing the culture and how, people operate. So changing that, then the technology, it just doesn't matter, But I still find 100% of the accounts I go to, 100% of the organizations I go to, the big barrier is not the technology, it's not the tooling, it's the culture, the people that refuse to change, to do things differently. There was I don't know if you listened to Accenture earnings call, and I think it was last month or maybe earlier this month. And one of the things, I think she had let go of 11,000 employees. And one of the things they asked is like, you fired a whole bunch of people. And her thing was, we're in the world of AI and people need to change. I made it very clear. You need to adopt or get out. Some didn't adopt, they're out. Now, not all CEOs are as maybe direct and, harsh, but, that's the big roadblock. It's not the tooling, it's not the technology, it's not what this software versus that software or this hardware versus that hardware. It's really the people that need to change. And if you take care of that, if you tackle that first, if you make it a mandate that everyone has to leverage AI, everyone needs to get XYZ done, get their badging, they have to understand it, and actually change the process. Because as you're going through transformation, we went through this moving to cloud versus on-prem. It is not the same process. Spinning up an image in Microsoft Azure or Google GCP or AWS It's not the same as ordering like Dell or HPE hardware and, rack and stack and then set. It's not the same process. So if your process doesn't change and it still takes 2 months as it did for physical hardware for cloud,
Right.
then you're not taking advantage of the benefits that come with provisioning on cloud.
Right.
That is what you need to change first. And I think that's the one step a lot of organizations miss. They just go direct to tools and then they're shocked when they don't see the benefits.
That's great advice. So what you're saying, or what I heard, is you have to change the behavior and the beliefs first, or in parallel to implementing a new technology. Get them to want to embrace the technology and to want to go achieve that change that you're hoping for as a leader. And also, it sounded like you have to communicate what the change is you're expecting as well with the
Correct.
quote. Yeah, that's terrific. What's you specialize in executive buy-in? Clearly, you're pitching all the time to large company leaders. So you specialize in executive buy-in. What's the secret to winning that trust in the boardroom?
You got to know your execs. I am the biggest social media stalker, and I admit, because when you go into a new exec, whether they're internal or external, doesn't matter. Every exec is very particular in how they receive information, how to agree to pass, and the things that ticks them off, things they would never support, things they don't want to hear about, or things they don't care about. So every time I want to go in front of a new exec, I do my research to understand, go into social media, listen to their posts, listen to their interviews, read their posts. Some of them have books, read their books, learn about things that they consider important, things that they're very much against. Don't go in front of an exec without kind of understanding what's important to them, because a lot of times you get one shot at you. Don't deliver on what they expected, you may never get that second meeting. And I like to open with letting them talk. People like to talk. So
Right.
Let them talk. Let them tell you. Don't tell them what you think they need or what they think they want. Let them tell you what they need, what they want, and what their goals and objectives are. It creates a sense of partnership versus I'm trying to sell you something, or I'm trying to tell you something. None of the execs like that. They want to make their own decisions. They want to be the one with the brightest idea. So by you giving that to them and letting them be that person, you will actually gain their sponsorship a lot easier than if you went in and you told them exactly what you need them to do.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So you're saying, listen deeply, listen more than talking. Mm-hmm. And number one, what you said first was you do deep research, know your stakeholder, know the board member, that executive, that colleague that you need to convince in that room, know them deeply, understand what motivates them, what moves them, and then you're armed to disarm them.
Exactly.
And open them up to receive some of the messaging or things that you need to communicate to them.
That's right.
That's terrific. And that's why you're winning. Thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
Azzy, I want to thank you for joining the podcast today and fitting us into your schedule. I've really enjoyed connecting and hearing about your journey. You've been very generous with your time, and I know my listeners will enjoy watching and learning from your experiences. Where can people reach you? What's your preferred contact method?
And thanks, Nigel. Thank you for having me. It was a fantastic session, and hopefully I can help at least one person out there. You can always reach me on my LinkedIn profile, or you can reach me via my personal email, Azi Handley 40 @gmail.com.